Isère, France, July 2021. Witness Notes 22. After you have read these introductory paragraphs once, you can skip to the new, old content here. If you are listening, then the timestamp is around the 2-minute 45-second mark. Introduction. The word settle to me carries connotations I am keen to avoid. I have never felt settled, or perhaps I cannot recall a time I felt settled. I do not feel settled now, writing this, and I've lived in the same house for 3.5 years. Without even discussing the obvious issues of colonisation, I just don't feel like I could or should settle. Better to keep my constituent parts shook up, agitated perhaps, rather than separating and stagnant. Instead, I feel as though I have been travelling for years, maybe because I have not lived in my home nation of Scotland for 8.5 years. Perhaps because I know I won't stay here forever, or maybe because I carry that concept of home in a way which differs from many. More precisely, I still think of myself as a slow traveller, globally feral. Recently, I've been revisiting places through the photographs and words I recorded when my feet crossed their soil. This is a way of reminding myself of where I have been, not just in space and time, but in mind too. It is a wonderful thing to come out of below and rediscover myself through words I crafted, through the lens of a camera, where memory has wandered in the fog for too long. Thank you, past me. When I first started sharing letters with the world in this fashion 6 or more years ago, I usually began them with a vignette of where I was, a sort of travel diary mixed with nature observation, locking in the setting for the reader before I spoke of other things, and by so doing ensuring that place fed into the whole. It was a useful device for a reader and myself both, but as these letters were sent to so few readers, and now languish archived behind a paywall, I thought it a shame not to share these snippets again. As such, I am going to share a short series of these sketches accompanied by a photograph from that time, sent to you in date order, beginning with the second eldest. I shall include the above paragraphs in each of the letters in this series, but I shall also include a link at the very start so you can skip ahead once you are familiar with the above words. If you are listening and similarly want to skip, then the timestamp you want to navigate to will be in the same place. Taken without these paragraphs, each is a short read, and I hope you enjoy them. Isère, France, July 2021. Moving through a natural woodland is different from passing through any other environment. You cannot rush, you cannot allow yourself to miss the little details. The more time you spend amongst the trees, the more you realize this, and the quicker your pace alters. Slow, slower, pause, repeat. Essentially, you return to a more natural state, a rhythm as old as our species itself. You listen, you look. These senses you already know well, pulling in huge amounts of data. For most people, the vast majority of their information comes from sight and sound, but spend time in the woods and you learn to touch things, that tree bark, that rock or leaf, for example. You learn to inhale in a different way, deliberately sampling the air and all the varied perfumes it brings. You can even learn to taste that same air or pick a leaf or fruit and chew. Then there are the senses we don't always realize exist, let alone consciously utilize. Some of these can be a little unnerving when you first start to actively use and acknowledge them. Some people call them the sixth sense, which quite frankly is silly. We have far more than 5 senses after all. Learning to listen to that little voice in your head, the one which tells you something is watching you, or that there's something ahead on the trail. These things take time, but it is time which is well spent indeed. Of course, this isn't supernatural at all, but simply your brain processing different information and picking up on tiny details you have consciously missed. Perhaps a change in the air brought a tenderless scent. We often fail to use our noses as we can. Try it now. Sitting reading this, open your nostrils wide and inhale slowly and deliberately. You may be surprised what you can sample. Similarly, learning to snuffle like a dog at a scent trail is possible too, involving faster inhalation and sampling, your sense of smell actually being worked properly. Both these things can seem like strange magic, but also seek to remind us how civilization can dull our own bodily functions. The woodland is a complex machine of many parts. It exists on different scales and even across time. I have walked across Scottish hillsides, devoid of any tree cover, but have known from the wide flourishes of native bluebells and anemones that I was walking through the ghost of a wood. If you look closely at the ground around you, you can often see small depressions, pockmarks from where trees were once blown over, tearing the ground and leaving their mark long after they are rotted into the soil, eaten by large mouths and small. There exists a special light in the woods. It filters through seasons and sun and rain, drifting through lifetimes, whether that of the tiny flowers carpeting the forest floor, your own, or that of the grandest oak. Wooded mountain valleys can maintain microclimates of their own, entirely different to that a stone's throw away. Each area attracting a differing clientele, a question of scale within scales, Matryoshka style. One side of a wooded valley is entirely different to the other. Different species of trees allow different understories, different flora and fauna, all within a tiny area. You can even teach yourself to know what species of trees are present by listening to the wind. Different leaves make different sounds. Watch, listen, learn, one rustle for oak and another for ash. To learn about the wood is to learn about life itself. It can teach us as much about ourselves as it does about this tree or that, or who that caterpillar becomes. What chewed those holes? Why is this leaf patterned like that? Which friend left those tracks? To learn about the wood is to be reminded of what matters, to be rejuvenated, to be healed of those myriad invisible wounds we receive within the urban environment. This process can be difficult for some people, taking a step back, revisiting atrophied senses, sometimes feeling enclosed and claustrophobic, primal and imagined fears rearing their head. But the results are worth it. Once, a friend of mine was concerned about my leaving my job to spend time in the woods on my own, worried about the dangerous lone men in the woods with their knives and axes. I gently pointed out these men are nearly always fictional, that they simply don't exist, and I would be fine out there, with my knives and axe, alone. It's not hard to see how these stories and fears appear. If hikers or kayakers had met me at my wildest with a long beard, wood smoke scented, wearing my axe on my belt, a knife at the other side, and another around my neck, and I wonder what they would have thought. In the UK, certainly, these things are no longer common, nor always legal. As a counterpoint of sorts to the above, I remember one long, rambling conversation with my sadly now dead dissertation tutor, the larger-than-life professor and count, I believe, Marek Svelabel. We were talking about woodlands and human life in woods, and he explained about Finnish settlers to the Midwest US, and how they would often plant trees all around their homestead close, blocking extensive views, the wide open prairie deeply unsettling for them, having come from a place where the woods were deep and all-pervasive. To me, to walk in a woodland, especially one less managed, less tamed, is to hear the voices of our ancestors, to understand how we are but a blink in time, connected to something vast and essentially, reassuringly, incomprehensible. They are our ancestral home, and to sit beneath the spreading branches of ancient friends is to step back in time, become something we are perhaps meant to be. Finally, if you can afford to, there are currently 2 direct ways to support my work here. The first is to take out a paid subscription. The second way to support me here is to use my Ko-fi button link to send a tip of any amount. If you enjoyed this letter and wish to share it with others, please do so. I love it when someone shares my work. I also love it when you comment on a piece. Really, really love it. Thank you. Finally, many thanks for reading. I truly appreciate each and every one of you who does.